Hey everyone, it's Bob Pulver from Elevate Your AIQ. We are here on site at HR Tech, and I have the pleasure of chatting with Mr. Ben Mones from Fama. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. How's your show?
Absolutely. It's been kind of a whirlwind.
A little crazy.
A little crazy. A little AI overwhelm.
You won 20 grand at the tables last night, though.
Oh, if only. If only.
They don't care. I don't know.
Yeah. So talk to me. Well, first, if you could just share a little bit about your background and the impetus for starting Fama and
Sure.
what you guys are working on.
Yeah. So my background, I'm an enterprise software guy. So I've been doing software pretty much for my whole career. And I didn't know anything about HR before I got into the business, right? So I always tell people I thought literally that background checks were stored in some secret underground bunker, right? 20 miles beneath the Pentagon. There was some like minority report screen that people, that's not how it works. In any event, no, I had hired a guy, looked great on paper, the previous startup, resume references checked out, seemed like the right dude. A few months into the job, unfortunately, the guy ended up sexually harassing one of our top salespeople. And after the fact, we saw all of this like pejorative, misogynistic about women, and we've seen it. Never hired this guy, never brought him on board. So I kind of came at Fama, which is, as you know, is a candidate screening company. We think that who we are in text, image, and video online tells us a lot about how somebody's going to act in the workplace around fellow employees, around customers, that sort of thing. So yeah, I experienced the pain that we solve for simply as like not even an HR person, just a hiring manager. So that was really how I came to it. And then sort of began to ask folks about my network. Hey, have you ever used social media to hire somebody? And of course, the answer is yes. And then, okay, well, what do you like? What do you don't like? What does an ideal solution look like? And 9 years later, here we are.
Yeah. So what are the kinds of like attributes that you are looking for? I mean, you talk about the sort of signals about the bad behavior, but like, is it always part of like a sort of risk mitigation kind of approach, or are you also looking at someone's sort of social contributions and the way that they speak and some of the positive qualities that they may be exhibiting
Sure.
you would never find on a resume?
Absolutely. And what you never would find on a resume is kind of the key answer here. And for us, absolutely on the risk side, right? Things like tolerance, harassment, threats, the sorts of normalization of what would traditionally be called aberrant points of view. That's what we're trying to identify from the risk management side. But to your point, it's not just all the bad of trying to weed people out, right? We think that our digital identities can tell us a lot about not just who somebody is from a negative perspective, but from a positive perspective. So, for years there have been companies that have used text samples of text or writing samples that someone provides to, extract traits or competencies that might be from a psychographic perspective predictive of success in a certain role. So we're actually starting to be able to pull some of that out. We can actually get big five analyses just based on like a TikTok video that someone has recorded or a LinkedIn post that they wrote or something like that. So we're starting to add these dimensions of not just who somebody is, negative perspective, but also positive. There's some cool stuff we're working on now too, of like companies that people have worked at, people worked together before you learn that from online, companies' performance at a time the person was in a role, that sort of thing. So a lot of just really interesting data that we can help essentially go to a customer and say, hey, look, you want to go from short list to finalist? All this AI is making your life crazy.
Yeah.
Let's help fuel the most human part of your process, which is going that short list to finalist part.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking, why wouldn't someone doing like outbound sourcing at the top of the funnel start to incorporate that? Because for all these people that are, I mean, I can speak to this firsthand. I mean, you're always trying to build and improve your own sort of personal brand, and not in a bragging kind of way.
Sure.
Certainly,
I know exactly
plenty of that. There's some
I'm
bragging.
delighted to announce.
Yeah. So honored to be speaking.
Yeah. Absolutely thrilled.
Yes.
Yeah. To say.
But yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you be looking at it earlier in the funnel? I mean, obviously, I see the logic with you're down selecting, and I want to make sure that my my finalists deserve to be those final candidates. But it just seems like there's opportunities to inject this information even earlier. So
I couldn't agree more. And I think part of the future, that's what it could look like, right? think part of that could come from the fact that you have like candidate screening in its traditional definition is being substantially disintermediated by AI right now. Like, you got chatbots talking to chatbots, right? I mean, you got conversational ATSs, which downstairs are what, like a third of the ATSs or
But if you,
conversational ATS. You've got so these applicants that are now talking to chatbots, and now you've got chatbots for the applicant that are talking to these chatbots on the applicant's behalf, right? You got like AI resume filtering, and then AI created resumes, right? So you've got this like AI versus AI, where suddenly everybody looks equivalently qualified
Yeah.
to jump on a first phone screen with an interviewer, right? So I think you're spot on. Companies are going to start thinking about there have to be ways for me to glean and bypass these AI filters, if you will,
Yeah.
to learn more about who's going to be a good fit. Maybe running this analysis at the front of the funnel, Snapdown Recruiter could go a long way.
I don't have a background in HR either.
Yeah.
I pivoted into this whole area after being large enterprise transformation for most of my career. When you start looking at these problems, you naturally do a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking and
Of course.
and just say, look, why wouldn't you take this approach or whatever? Because really, some of the domain stuff is really irrelevant if you think about what you're trying to achieve, and it just seems like this whole thing around, like you said, you've got an AI generated job description being matched and customized, AI generated CVs, judged by a third AI doing the matching.
Yeah.
It's like all of that was completely unnecessary because it told you nothing differentiating to your point about.
I just got more people to talk to.
Exactly.
Right.
Which you'll probably get an
You
AI
do anyway.
agent to have those conversations. But yeah, it's so funny. Tim, Zach, and I were just talking about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like where does this end? I mean, do we all have just digital twins, and then all of a sudden you have interviews on your scheduled on your calendar without you even knowing that you applied to the job?
I mean, absent a crystal ball, I do think this idea of the reflection of our analog self in a digital environment, and I think avatars is probably like the simplified way to think about it, but I think 100%. I think we're going to start finding ourselves in a position where those that represent us from an AI perspective, and this is not that far away in terms of what's possible, right? I mean, the core technology exists, and it's probably being worked on right now, and we could see it even next year at this conference. But, I think that does bring up an important piece that this is all like workflow optimization. This isn't like identifying real quality. This is trying to just accelerate processes that have already happened before. It's the same thing that happened in sales and marketing, right? It's the same thing that just like now we have an automated AI SDR that's going to send, instead of 250 emails where one person responds, it's going to send 500 emails. It's going to be cheaper. And guess what? 2 people are going to respond. It's like who gives a shit? It's like, we're just automating and accelerating things that don't work.
Exactly. You're speeding up a broken. It's like automating a process that you haven't streamlined.
Well, that's a corporate term.
We've
automated processes that we stream.
Well, that's true. But when I was doing automation strategy at NBC, it was like, okay,
totally.
let's take a look. Let's do some process mining and really look at where some of the friction exists to improve an experience. And let's make sure it's simplified as much as possible before you go to the technology. The technology is an enabler, but you've got to start with what is the actual business problem.
That's the perspective. Yeah, that's right. Spot on. And again, like the practitioners who are doing the work have the years of have the developed expertise. Because when I think about hiring, I get pulled into final interviews, right? Culture check. I help sort of set the expectations of candidates, right? I'll find some good ones. But, at the end of the day, it's a human thing, right? Like the conversations around, hey, Jane, she seems like she's got the years of experience, right? She's been in this job before. But John seems like a real culture. John seems like a guy who's hungry. He's ready for the job. Jane seems to have a deeper bench. Like that's where HR comes in. That's where talent acquisition can guide a hiring manager down a path, ask the right questions. And I think that's where we'll start to see the right types of technology begin to accelerate the existing expertise, the existing pattern recognition for these corporate executives so that they can, do their job better, faster, with more info, but still making a decision. I think the issue we're dealing with now is that AI is making a decision for us in a lot of these contexts. We're seeing companies push back.
Yeah. How do you think about the disclosure of the information that you're gathering, where it is doing both finding, uh, positive, attributes about a person to augment their profile, or it's a risk mitigation piece really for the employer.
Yeah.
But how do you think about the fact that because I think there's a lot of legislation that says if a candidate didn't explicitly opt in or disclose or whatever, then is it fair to incorporate that? I mean, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, look, since the 1970s, the FCRA has been around to help govern, even far before AI technology, all this has come into play. Anytime a third party compiles public information about a person, packages that all together, and sells it to another business to help that company make the hiring decision, the FCRA gets involved, the FTC has oversight over that because there are candidate consent that needs to happen. Candidates need to have a right to review the information or to contest that and to know what's out there about them to level again that playing field of information that folks have. So yeah, for years we've been collecting consent when it comes to whether or not a candidate is going to be evaluated for risk. What's interesting, the positive side, is that if you truly remove the idea of a negative sort of impact on a person from this work, the question we're sort of saying, hey, it's like, well, how much do candidates need, right? If it's all positive, if it's all guided towards helping someone get a job by identifying the good things that are out there about them. If you don't give a reason for someone not to hire, but you give them many reasons to hire, then where does that fall? I think historically the government says then you don't provide consent, that sort of thing. It's positive. But that I think is now starting to come into question from the AI bias, that sort of thing, where plenty of legislation now with companies that are here that won't talk about what they're going to go on for that very thing.
Yeah,
because that's sort of what big company in Washington's done.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see,
Yeah.
just seeing some of these trends that we saw earlier, advent of, social media itself. I was at IBM working with research when we first formed a partnership with Twitter, and we were, looking at all this data, and we were using the Big Five, lots of personality insights it was called, and you could basically look at some of these Twitter and sort of assess that. Mine, I thought, was always, relatively accurate, even though it's not a huge data set to interpret.
No.
But it was funny to see the visualization of some of that because it started to look at sentiment and tone.
I think at the end of the day, like you can collect so much information about people.
Yeah.
You can draw insight out of public data sets. I mean, to your point, I've seen some wild things both on companies that looked at from an investment perspective, also Matt Fama, people who worked here, Skunk projects they've tried out. At the end of the day, it's like, what moves the needle? Who gives a shit about what can and can't mean about a person? It doesn't move the needle on what decision. I think that's what we kind of get like lost in is that people at times I've been victim of this too. Like you get excited by the fact that you look at Bob Culver's timeline and see, man, like what was going on in 2016 in the spring? Like,
I can tell you some stories.
Yeah, I can tell you. But at the same time, like, who cares?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the big question. It's like, what's going to actually move the needle for us?
Yeah. So how do you incorporate AI into the platform? And I mean, obviously, there's old school AI, predictive AI or whatever. But are there? How are you sort of expanding that to maybe generative AI use cases or anything like that?
Yeah, but for us, we've been doing old school AI, like you said. We've been doing like NLP and image recognition, video processing forever, which is structured and unstructured information, content classification, right? Being able to train a machine. This is what tolerance looks like in text. This is what a gun looks like in an image, and let's find that. Machines can do that. We've been doing that since about 2015. That's all been in-house for us. But to your point, like OpenAI, ChatGPT, IBM, whatever you're using. So for us, we've started to look at ways that we can use Gen AI as part of our like overall classification. It's for us like more of a say like workflow reducer, time accelerator. It allows us to essentially do what we do today with a lot less server load and a lot less spend to move into like a serverless infrastructure and process more data, filter things out that an algorithm used to have to review. Now we can use a Gen AI model to say, oh, none of this needs to be reviewed at all, but this stuff Gen AI still not sure on.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that needs to be. So it's allowed us to actually streamline our operations pretty substantially. But yeah, we have been looking at like more. You have to be really careful in our world of not like providing a summary or a point of view about a person or scoring someone. And I think anytime you're organizing blocks of text, there's like a natural user ask to do that. We deal with more like tons of text and image and video about people, which can all be broken down into bits and pieces. But yeah, we're starting to look at some ways that we can, like, as I mentioned earlier, like tell things about how people work together for companies, integrate financial reports, that sort of thing. And that is all more just like creating more of a human approach to our like, as opposed to really changing the nature.
Yeah. No, I think you can increase the quality and accuracy of that. Obviously, eliminate hallucinations. I'm always a little nervous about summarization tools. Like,
That's right.
did
That's
it-
why
so
we've stayed.
this-
That's
did
why
it
we've
miss
stayed away from because dude, we've
things?
tried. Don't get me wrong. Like
Yeah.
we've tried. We've looked at as soon as it came out. We were like, shit, this totally changed the game for us because we do have some executive due diligence products that have a real trained investigator who's got a background in law enforcement, research, library science that summarizes like dense blocks of information about executives as part of pre-investment or executive due diligence, executive search workflow. But it was hallucinating. It didn't really make sense. And a lot of the language was kind of choppy, disorganized, and you could tell it was written by Gen AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we use it. I mean, it's less sexy to talk about how we use it. It's like workflow optimization, which is really another corporate term there. But it's meaningful for us from a gross margin standpoint. Helped us accelerate gross margin accretion substantially. Helped us return a lot more money into the bottom line and reinvest back in the business. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's part of the goal here, right? Like, how do you free up bandwidth and resources and
right.
capital to reinvest in the business, including in your own employees and the upskilling that they do. So to keep pace. I was talking to people earlier about I was talking to an interview intelligence CRO, and I said, just out of curiosity, you guys get like anonymized data out of all these interviews, right? I said, yeah, we can see, so you can see the topics. So what's the prevalence of people actually talking about AI in the job and get to the interview? Because I mean, obviously, we're starting to see it in job descriptions as well. Someone who's got some level of AI literacy.
It used to be like, can you use social media? It's like,
right. So where?
Yeah.
How many words a minute can you type?
Right. I excel at Excel. Right. Yeah.
So no, it's interesting. So one of my observations is like that has accelerated, pretty quickly, right? So I think people are going to become more capable, hopefully at a team level, not just individual. I always harp on this individual productivity, like sort of vanity metric. 56% more productive. I'm like, that number. What am I supposed to do with that number?
It's like a GDP number.
Yeah, honestly. But the point is, we work in teams. We've got to elevate the team. We've got to elevate the organization. We've got to think differently, work differently, and sort of adapt. But as we're building solutions, whether you're, a solution provider like Fama, or you're an individual who's been given, license to create a custom, GPT or whatever, like you need part of your upskilling this, time, this responsible AI piece is like, you need to learn how to do it properly. You need to know where some of the guardrails are. We don't just give people keys to the car. So, and I saw that with social media, so cloud. You can't just give anyone access to your cloud instances.
Yeah, right.
Total usage.
Yeah. Get all your stuff taken care of.
So, like, what tools do you play around with, like Gen AI?
I've actually started using. We're a Google Workspace shop at Fama, so I've been playing around with Gemini. It's pretty cool, and it's like I was a big doubter at first, I think, because like when you're building to understand the limitations of it, you're just kind of jaded on like, of course, like sold people technology that's
Right.
you know what I mean. But I've been pleasantly surprised by just like day to day small tasks, questions I have, plants like that. It's like there's white stuff all over it. Took a picture of it with ChatGPT. I was like, "What's that?" and I like fixed it, and that was cool. Like I was like that to me is cool. You know, like so it's little things like that. Like I would say open-ended questions that I probably would have had to figure it out a little bit. Just use GPT for, but you know, I've run it like through. I've tried some more application stuff. Description.
Yeah.
Cookie cutter.
Yeah.
If anything, levels up the playing field, puts you in a position where you have to compete more for smart world talent.
Any advice to elevate one's AIQ? Asking.
I would say recognize that you are still the one in control. That you have the power. That truly though, it's like so many of us are fearful of AI and what it might do. You know, the Elon Musk robot takeover Skynet narrative, right?
Yeah.
I totally reject. You know, what I think about when it comes to AIQ, it's like, you know, if there's two craftsmen, right? One of the craftsmen has a hand saw and sandpaper, right? The other one's got a table saw or something like that. They're both supposed to make the same table for the same RFP. The guy with the automated equipment, he's going to make it just, again, equivalently qualified. He's going to make it cheaper. He's going to do it faster, right? So I think that's what we're going to start to see. Doesn't mean you're going to automatically, everyone knows how to make a new table or a new chair or something like that. But if you know how to use the tools, if you educate yourself, put yourself in a position to let your own expertise flourish, I think you're going to find yourself in a position where you're going to be in the market with the right adoption of these tools. The right one is not going to take you from A to Z. It might get you from A to F a little bit faster, but you still got to.
Yeah. Excellent.
That'd be my take.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for spending some time with me.
Appreciate you having me.
I think there's some quality insights for the audience. So
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Next up,
Absolutely. Talk to you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude, of course. You doing another one after this, or this last one for you?
You are my finale.
Nice, you're my finale, too. That makes sense. Look at that.
Spared no expense for you.